This is entitled High Frequency Mobile Process Audit Programs, a fast-track strategy for cutting quality costs and building the quality of culture. Scott Larsen will be our presenter today. Scott is the Chief Technology Officer and is a seasoned technology executive who leads product development and infrastructure management for Beacon Quality. He was previously the Senior Director of R&D at Schneider Electric Software, where he managed 8 product lines that included cloud-enabled engineering tools for the company's largest control system platform. Prior to Schneider, he was the Senior Director of R&D at Sage, heading up product development for the company's leading ERP accounting platform for mid-tier businesses. Scott leads the Lean Agile Scrum transformation at both companies, or led, I should say, and was key architect of the Schneider Electric Software Enterprise Lean Software Development Lifecycle. His expertise is to manage large and complex global teams and has helped build him a reputation for growing market-leading technology companies. A control software and systems engineer for 12 years, Scott has a deep understanding of manufacturing operations and processes and how to use this knowledge to build solutions that solve manufacturing challenges. So that's Scott. Welcome, Scott. And again, we're going to have some dedicated periods for asking questions. Please use the chat area for asking the questions. And with that, I turn the baton, the mic, over to Scott.
Yeah, thank you, Kurt. Appreciate that. Always sounds more impressive when you hear somebody else say it. It didn't feel that impressive when I was doing it, but it was a lot of fun. So yeah, let's go ahead and get going. So as Kurt mentioned, I'm Scott Larsen, CTO with Ease. In manufacturing, reducing quality costs can be a lot like trying to bail out a leaking boat. You can empty bucket after bucket over to the side, but you can't get above the water until you plug those leaks themselves. A new leak often appears the moment you fix another one, and the fixes themselves might only be temporary. Manufacturers are trying to figure out, or are actually finding that layered process audits, or as they're more commonly known as LPAs, are the type of high-frequency audit involving all layers of management and are singularly powerful method for permanently repairing those leaks in quality. LPAs have helped automotive and aerospace suppliers achieve significant quality cost reductions in just a few months, also providing a structured framework that fosters a culture of quality. The trick really is managing the complexity of these unique audits, which is where automation software such as Beacon Quality come in to help companies make huge strides with limited resources. So let's review what we're going to be discussing today. So we're going to talk about explanation of layered process audits. We'll talk about bigger, faster quality cost reductions. We'll talk about LPA benefits and the quality, the culture of quality, and challenges of LPA implementations, overcoming complexity through automation, and closing those loops on LPA data. So then we'll start off. So first, why layered process audits? An article in the Harvard Business Review noted that organizations, including original equipment manufacturers, are, quote, increasingly relying on their suppliers to reduce costs, improve quality, and to develop new processes and products faster than their rivals vendors can. The issue isn't whether companies should turn arm-length relationships with suppliers into close partnerships, but really how. One way that OEMs are working with their Tier 1 suppliers is to improve quality is through layered process audits. Layered process audits were first introduced in the early 2000s as a paper-based checklist to reduce variation and defects through repeat verification that operators are following standardized processes. The LPA mandate came out of the ISO TS 16949 Quality Management System standard as a Chrysler-specific requirement in the early 2000s and was later adopted by other OEMs. Expectations for a supplier's LPA program are fairly straightforward and call for multiple layers of management to perform LPAs on a regular basis, including one audit per week by top management and at least one audit per shift by an operational manager that covers build techniques and craftsmanship. It's readily apparent that the sooner an error is detected and fixed in the manufacturing sequence, the lower the cost to remedy the situation. But why are LPAs needed when we have so many other kinds of checks and balances? Because layered process audits focus on the real issue, following processes the same way every time. They help manufacturers and service providers take control of processes, reduce mistakes, and improve both work quality and the bottom line. Sure, it's mandated for Tier 1 automotive suppliers, but what we're seeing LPAs start to be used in aerospace, metal and wood manufacturing, plastics, food and pharmaceutical manufacturing, as well as oil and gas. Organizations with robust LPA programs in place see significant lower rework and scrap, fewer warranty holdbacks, and reduced customer complaints. In fact, a study in 2016 by Applied Logistics showed that a full 75% of manufacturing defects result from nonconformance with processes, which is why LPA programs are so effective at reducing quality costs, because the underlying cause of most issues is a lack of process standardization or a failure to follow these approved processes. But what are LPAs exactly? Layered process audits are short and fast audits with a set of yes or no questions that take about 10 minutes to complete. Their simplicity makes them accessible to people unfamiliar with process details, including those from other departments. In fact, the whole idea of LPAs is to have all layers of the organization part of the quality process from C-suite on down. Supervisors conduct frequent process audits in their own area, while higher-level managers conduct the same audits less frequently and over a broad range of areas. A cross-functional LPA team identifies and updates audit questions based on items such as past quality issues or defects and resulting corrective action, process failure modes and effects analysis or PFMEA forms, procedures critical to product quality and or customer satisfaction. These audits also typically include integrated corrective and preventative actions taken either during or immediately after the audit. And it's the questions that make LPAs really different. So let's take a look at some examples. The questions that are part of a layered process audit are written to avoid the need for specialized knowledge because people from throughout the organization are involved in conducting these audits. On the screen, you can see some examples of specific LPA questions. Traditionally, you would have the audit for a specific location within the plant, but it doesn't just have to be on the plant floor. It could also be in shipping. It could be in returns or even administration. The key is to have specific questions that are simple and straightforward enough so that anyone in the organization can answer them, even if they don't work in the area that they're auditing. LPAs usually focus on processes and devices where deviations from the standard represents the highest risk of deviations or defects. If, for example, an electronic scale continually makes critical measurements for ingredients in a sensitive chemical compound, problems that affect the performance and calibration of the scale could quickly cascade into a bad product. The process for calibrating the scale is a good candidate for an audit. It should be examined frequently to ensure that it remains within tolerances. Another example is a set of bolts that must be tightened in a specific order. The LPA should check that the standard work instructions are at the assembly station and the operator is tightening the bolts in a specified order. In the automotive Tier 1 supplier space where LPAs are mandated, questions about any customer complaints are also need to be included and tagged with the customer's name and the complaint, so it's easy for the customer to pull that question and make sure their suppliers are compliant. Other manufacturers will regularly cycle in questions that they found to be problem areas of the plant. As you all know, the key to quality improvement is to gain and to build upon your culture of quality. Once you have a foundation of quality success, you must be able to hold those gains. So before we jump into writing LPA questions or the different layers that should be involved in LPAs, are there any questions? I think as Kurt mentioned, you can use the chat area.
So again, we'll be using the chat area instead of making all the phone lines live. So if you want to ask a question, please write it into the chat area. Here's one question that does come to mind is, how big does a company need to be to effectively do LPAs? How would you answer that one?
Size, of course, is relative. I mean, and we have customers that use Beacon that are very small companies. They have 1 or 2 plants, all the way up to, very massive, supplier organizations with, 90, 100, 100 plus plants. Beacon really is kind of tailored to work, with really any size organization. It's not so much about the size of the organization as it is about the reproducibility of your processes and how you ensure that. If you have any process, where deviation is going to impact quality, Beacon or LPAs in general is definitely a candidate for that.
And I do have one question, and I'm not sure if you can see the question, Scott, as I can see them, but Scott has asked, hey, can we have this presentation once it's done? We will be sending out a link that will contain this give and take, this interaction, but I believe it will also have a copy of the presentation itself. So just to answer that. And we have another question. Scott, can you see the question from Doug?
I've got one from Dan. I've got one from Dan that says, can you use this for non-manufacturing process?
Go ahead.
Absolutely. It's really, it's primarily used for manufacturing because manufacturing has, work instructions and, required repeatable processes that they use. But that's true for, for any sort of process, really. And we've had a number of conversations internally about how LPAs really can extend to almost anything where you have a repeatable process. And that, conformance to that process is required for a, repeatable outcome.
And there are 2 other questions. Can you see Tim and Doug's question? Would you consider work inspection as part of the audit? And how do you maintain a checklist with current quality issues? Great questions.
Yeah, work inspection for an LPA, maybe not so much. I mean, there is some inspection potential within an LPA, but it's, you have to remember the auditor. The auditor could be somebody from finance. And so we tend to make LPA audits fairly simple and fairly self-contained, typically with yes/no type questions. Now, sometimes, like within Beacon, if there is a deviation, we have the ability to capture pictures. And so you may capture a picture of a particular area, maybe a tool is not in conformance or whatever, they're not using the right tool, or maybe a label's not being, properly affixed or whatever. You can, take pictures, for that sort of thing. But, kind of as we've already discussed, really LPAs are really focused to be simple. And really the biggest benefit, in my opinion, the biggest benefit of LPAs is really injecting areas of the organization that normally would not be a part of that process into the actual, manufacturing or the process itself, right? And really seeing and discussing and talking with those folks that are actually doing the work, understanding where the challenges are, and being a part of that conversation.
And forgive me, but how do you maintain the checklist and keep it to those high-level issues that C-suite and so on, or the quality directors and the department owners are really worried about? So you're using those cross-functional people and getting their ownership, getting their engagement. How do you keep the checklist up to date, though? How do you keep it fresh?
Yeah, I mean, we have, of course, we have reporting, functions within Beacon where you can see non-conformances. You can see them in terms of, where they are in terms of their, the mitigation and the action on that. One of the things that we're working on also within Beacon is a corrective action feature, and we have kind of a limited beta version of that in production. But we're planning on expanding that so you can actually see your corrective actions across a single facility or multiple facilities and where they are in the corrective action process.
Okay.
And then, yeah.
And then as far as keeping checklists up to date on current quality issues, that's been a main pain point for people that are using paper-based audits, where they constantly have to remember to go and update the checklist with things that are found in the mitigations, things like that. So it does require a lot of admin work if you're doing it through paper.
Okay. One last question. Does it get overwhelming to perform and try to correct so many audits?
Probably no more so than, in any other, method of actually doing, an LPA. But I guess it's more the question of how overwhelming is it to deal without that knowledge, right?
Okay.
If you don't have the visibility in terms of where your process is maybe breaking down or where there's, deviations from that process and the resulting quality impact, trying to respond to, quality issues once they've already shipped and you have to come back and now you have to put a whole, action team in place to be able to deal with that sort of thing if we're talking automotive, is far more impactful and far more difficult to deal with.
All right, thank you.
Okay, all right.
Might have to click in.
Okay, so 3 strategies for writing better LPA questions. So, number 1, find a good source. Mainly, LPA questions should focus on areas that pose the biggest risk to product quality, safety, and organizational performance. The first place to look for LPA questions would be any area that has had previous problems. Other areas would be high-risk operational and process areas such as fabrication, setups, and changeovers. PFMEAs, areas that are reporting on scrap and similar issues, or root cause investigation results and previous corrective actions. The latest version of IATF 16949 was actually updated to state that a new question must be included in LPAs that directly relate to a customer's reject product, and to tag the question with the customer's name so it's easy to report on. Next would be to design simple, straightforward questions. Remember, an LPA should only take 10 to 15 minutes to conduct, yes or no questions, and should be specific. So this relates to one of the questions we just had. Avoid using vague words like proper or appropriate, as the auditor may not know what is proper or appropriate. Instead, state exactly what the specifications should be. An example of a bad question would be, are defective parts disposed of properly? A better question would be, are all defective parts tagged and set aside in a container clearly marked with red tape? That question would be easy to follow and answer even if you've never looked at the defective parts area. It's a simple yes or no answer. Refresh questions regularly. The entire purpose of LPA is to engage in continuous improvement that ultimately pushes defect rates lower and lower. However, if you have the same questions over and over, the improvements will stall and pencil whipping will set in, where audits become a simple flick of the wrist versus an actual review. Great times to update your LPA is changes in customer requirements, process or equipment changes, any corrective action, or any time business objectives change. Now that we have good questions in place and our bucket has no holes, let's take a look at who should be on your LPA team. So auditors participate at a frequency corresponding to their level of authority, with audits taking place multiple times a day. Automotive original equipment manufacturers, OEMs, like GM and Fiat Chrysler, require their suppliers to conduct LPAs, which are also recommended by Ford. As a proactive approach to reducing risk that makes management accountable for quality, LPAs also help demonstrate compliance with standards such as ISO 9001 and IATF 16949. But we're seeing that LPAs are needed for any manufacturer that has working employees building their products. It's not that we're trying to fix people. In fact, we believe it's because people want to do such a good job that they sometimes skip steps that they think will save them time, or not bring up issues that they see because it might get their friend in trouble or slow down production. LPAs provide the opportunity for coaching around quality to keep everyone honest and standards high and consistent. And this kind of goes back to my previous comment about really starting a conversation. By requiring participation from all layers and departments, LPAs make quality part of everyone's job description. A robust LPA program involves 3 to 4 layers. Layer 1, which would be your operators, team leads from the manufacturing area. Layer 2 would be shop floor supervisors and middle management. Layer 3 might be plant managers, director of quality, and executives. Each layer conducts audits at a frequency that corresponds to the level in the organization. For example, Layer 1 supervisors conducts an audit every shift, while the Layer 3 plant manager might do an audit every week or maybe monthly. As for actually conducting the audits themselves, some companies require all salaried employees to participate. And that goes back to that broad culture of quality. So we'll stop again and see if we have any questions up to this point about writing LPA questions or the different layers.
So one question I have, just through listening here, is why 3? Does it have to be 3 layers?
No, it does not. I mean, within Beacon, we support multiple layers, beyond 3. That's just typically what we've seen. Some of the standards do talk about that, but it could be 4, it could be 6. It really needs to be, what makes sense, what's achievable for the organization. We found that if you have too many layers, it gets very difficult to manage that because you have to schedule those audits, and the more layers you have, the more scheduling requirements, and management that go into that. We've kind of found that 3 is a nice kind of sweet spot, but it can be tailored.
Okay.
So I got a question from who scheduled these audits. Typically, we have a system, administrator that handles the scheduling. That person really is at the discretion of the organization themselves. It could be, a site, quality manager. It could be somebody more at a corporate level. It just depends. Depends on the organization. Okay.
I think we're good.
Yeah, okay, we'll move on here. Okay, so bigger, faster quality cost reductions. So compared to traditional inspection and audits, LPAs provide added layers of security to catch process variations before they cause defects or safety incidents. By generating large volumes of data, LPAs also increase visibility into the drivers of quality costs. In our experience, metrics where LPAs have the biggest impact include scrap and rework. Companies that implement LPAs have been able to cut scrap costs in half over the course of several months. And we actually have a specific customer where we've seen that actually come true. Customer returns. LPA implementation has been tied to a more than 50% reduction in customer defects in some organizations. Other companies have reported going months or longer without any customer returns. Total cost to quality. Reducing quality costs has a direct impact on bottom line revenue growth. One reason is that quality costs increase exponentially as you move from prevention to detection to correction of actual failures. As Edward Deming, one of the fathers of lean manufacturing, might say, manage the cause, not the result. Beyond just dollars and cents, LPAs also help companies develop a culture of quality. When fully implemented, LPA programs enable company-wide engagement. LPAs leverage auditors from multiple departments that include engineering, operations, supply chain, logistics, and so on. This makes quality part of the entire team's daily responsibilities, and I can't stress this enough. In fact, many companies involve people from departments such as operations, human resources, and finance. Proactive risk management. LPAs identify issues that impact customer satisfaction upstream rather than at the point of manufacture. Their structure also supports the central goal of corrective action, which is permanently reducing risk. Top-level prioritization. Conducting process audits multiple times each day keeps quality front and center as a priority. It also demonstrates a true commitment to quality, which is important given that it's often forced to compete with production targets and other priorities. And when you make management a visible presence on the plant floor, it's powerful evidence of an authentic commitment to quality. Ongoing communication. LPAs give operators the chance to share observations and suggestions directly with management. When people see leadership cares enough to be present and fix problems, they're more likely to speak up. Accountability. LPAs provide a vast amount of data companies can use to build accountability into their systems. With a streamlined set of metrics, suppliers are better equipped to define expectations, track progress, and communicate results. They give the hard data you need to see who's participating and who's falling behind on their responsibilities. It also makes it easier to identify individuals for special recognition. With sufficient data, you can even develop leading indicators, which are metrics that track with lagging indicators. For example, higher audit completion rates often correspond with higher yield, as seen on your screen. Cultural benefits aren't always as tangible, but they're essential building blocks for achieving any ambitious quality cost reduction. While manufacturers may see the benefits of LPAs, many struggle with implementation due to the inefficiency of paper-based or spreadsheet-based tracking systems. Some common stumbling blocks with LPA programs are inefficient scheduling. A given plant may need to conduct upward of 1,000 audits annually to meet LPA requirements. Companies often need to devote full-time resources just to plan and schedule the audits. Low audit completion rates. Organizations often struggle to keep up with the high frequency of audits required. A number of companies report only completing about 10% of scheduled audits. Data integrity problems. Getting good data from LPAs is impossible if people are flying through the audits and automatically checking yes for all items, commonly known as pencil whipping. This problem is rampant with paper checklists with little visibility into who's doing it. Analytical bottlenecks. Manual data entry and analysis can be time-consuming, leading to delays in viewing LPA data of weeks or longer. The risk to companies is not finding problems until large volumes of defective product are already delivered to customers. And then finally, outdated checklists. LPAs require continuous updates to checklist questions to account for changing risks and lessons learned. Recalling old checklists and distributing new ones is one of the first tasks to go when people get busy. The problem for manufacturers is that LPAs aren't just about checking some boxes. There's no such thing as an A for effort in the automotive industry, and you won't get credit for just having an LPA program. What matters to customers is whether you use LPAs to drive continuous improvement and having the documentation to prove it. So if a customer audits you and finds a stack of checklists with unprocessed data, it's not going to look good. In fact, manufacturing suppliers have learned the hard way that it can put their most important contracts at risk. And this kind of goes back to one of the other original questions about checklists, and I probably didn't answer that the best. But one of the things that we do within Beacon is we can randomize checklists. So that's the ability to go through the actual audit question list itself and create randomized sets of questions for those checklists that keep those audits fresh and prevents, from the kind of the staleness that we're talking about from setting in. So we'll kind of pause here real quick and we'll see if there's any questions around the challenges around LPAs.
So we have had a bunch of questions, and I'm not sure if you're seeing these at all, but, and I have to admit, two of them queued up after the slide went on to the next section, so I apologize to the attendee in that case. But we had two questions from Jim. Jim wanted to know, number one, who scheduled the audits, and I believe that you mentioned that it's necessary to have an FTE sometimes to do it, but how do you decide who's at the helm? Who's scheduling?
Yeah, like I said, that kind of, boils down to the organization itself and the current structure and how they currently handle, quality issues, but like I said, I mean, we've seen, plant quality managers, oftentimes be responsible for that. I know obviously somebody that's got their skin in the game in terms, with regards to quality, somebody that has some sort of process background, typically somebody that we see, responsible for scheduling. Now, one of the things we just talked about in terms of challenges, with spreadsheet-based systems or paper-based systems, scheduling is a nightmare. When you're trying to, schedule multiple layers of the organization, it can be very challenging to keep those schedules up to date. You've got to get input from all of the individuals and to keep the schedules relevant. One of the nice things about an automated system, and I'm obviously using Beacon as an example, is that scheduling is automated. You set specific parameters around scheduling, and it will automatically create audit scheduling. It will randomize the areas that they go to. It'll take into account availability, for those particular auditors and so on.
Okay. Getting lots of questions, so let's go to how can you relate the data to cost of poor quality or COPQ? It's a good question.
A little bit further up.
Is it further up? Yeah.
Yeah. There.
Yeah. Yeah, in terms of, that's also kind of a highly specialized question. It's going to depend a lot on, I think, the manufacturing process. It's hard to kind of generalize that, but kind of what we've already talked about. We've tended to see, where you're seeing greater engagement. You tend to see much better, quality metrics in terms of, rejects, rework, customer issues downstream. And conversely, where you tend to see lower engagement, worse issues, where you tend to see more deviation from process. Obviously, you tend to see more, quality issues, downstream as well. But yeah, so that's kind of a tough one to answer in general terms. But I think probably from a high level, that's what I would say.
And one question here is, do you have like a specific example that you could tout and just kind of wheel out here of the cost improvements?
Yeah, I mentioned earlier that, we did see, one of our larger customers, when they started doing LPAs and started using our tool specifically, their amount of reject and rework dropped by over 50%. And this was actually prior, this case study actually was written up and was done prior to my joining the company. And I was skeptical on that, like, really? That seems really, really fantastic.
Yeah.
And we just had that. I'm not going to name the company, but we actually had that person actually come in and talk to the development team in terms of, and it was actually beyond that. I mean, that was just one instance. He kind of went through, and he's the global director of quality for this particular company, and he went through a number of instances where LPAs and then, using Beacon has enabled some pretty dramatic improvements in specific areas. They're still in the process of rolling out LPAs and the tool across a number of their organizations, but where they're seeing some pretty dramatic improvements in the areas where they've done it.
That's a great example. A related question, can you speak to the typical time and resource commitments? The question asks for daily, monthly, and quarterly. And how did people handle the challenge? That's a big question, but can you speak to at least the typical time and resource commitment?
In terms of just doing LPAs in general or implementing an LPA program, I'm not seeing that question.
It's the last one that was asked, but why not both? My guess is this is more of a tactical question, and once the program's up and running, what kind of time commitment are you going to get from the people involved?
Yeah, that's, and that kind of comes back to, how you structure the LPA, the audit itself, the checklist. We typically, what we tend to do is, or we recommend, is keep it simple. You don't want to overwhelm your auditors, with, an extensive checklist. Make it focused, and that's kind of where it comes back to tailoring those audit questions and the checklist itself based on prior issues or areas where there's high risk. So, I think, we in the slide deck we'd mentioned, 15 minutes, roughly in that time frame. You want to keep it focused. And so one, it has a couple different things. One is to keep the auditor focused and not going off, kind of going off the rails, but also keep the time commitment down. Because if you have multiple layers of your organization that now have to chew up, 45 minutes to an hour of their day, it's going to be less likely to get engagement. From the administrative side, the automation aspect of it, and that's where something like Beacon comes in, has a huge impact on the overall administration of an LPA program. Because one, it can be managed, for a plant, a single person could manage the entire program, potentially, including the scheduling, without having to be a full-time dedicated person to do it. And so there's tremendous advantages in the administration. The setup portion of it too, as well. Obviously, there's a bit more work there because you've got to set up, your the kind of the structure for the program. You got to set up your questions. But we do a fair amount of help and hand-holding with that, in our implementations for our customers.
So Lauren has asked her question several times, so I just want to make sure that we get this to the surface. And these are great questions. How do we move away from paper while avoiding save as, pencil whipping?
Yeah,
that's the first question.
Yeah, one of the great benefits to being electronic, and this is where we tend to be a little bit unique even in the realm of automation, is mobile audits. So, like for instance, we have the ability to do the audits off of a phone. The great thing about that is you can walk the floor, taking your mobile device, take pictures, complete your audit, as you're actually on the line. The nice thing about that is you get your data, you get your data and your results immediately. So, and even if there's outages, like there's a internet outage or whatever, especially for the mobile device, it has the ability to do it offline. So you don't necessarily need a live data connection to complete your audit. You can actually complete multiple audits without actual live connection. And then as soon as you get that, it immediately uploads that information to the centralized server.
I think you're anticipating Lauren's questions because she also asks, hey, or she reflects, there may not be portable resources. And you've answered that part. But she does,
I saw that, yeah.
Okay. And accountability, it can be really difficult, really challenging when desktop saving is just so darn easy, right?
Exactly.
So it's a great point, Lauren.
Actually, we had one customer that actually had a question requiring auditors to actually take a picture of themselves on the plant floor so that they could know for sure that they were actually on the plant floor at that time. And then Beacon, of course, has time stamping, so the timestamp also ensured that they were on the floor at that time.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's another question. In internal auditing IA, you go through several days of training. That's true. And how do you conduct and to what extent do you qualify someone as trained to be an LPA auditor?
Well, yeah, that's once again, I think that's more organizationally specific. Because LPA really is across the organization. The training programs, for that sort of thing probably are going to be very different, and are not going to be necessarily a standardized certified process. But that's the whole purpose of trying to keep the LPA and the LPA audit checklist and questions simple.
Okay.
So there's training.
Yeah.
I think that's it for the questions.
Okay, some great questions.
Let's
move on.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just wondering if there was another section, that's all.
Yeah, we got more.
Okay.
We're getting close to the end here, so. So we'll talk about overcoming the complexity through automation. So some of the stuff is, I already kind of alluded to, but we'll go through it. So for companies that start with paper-based or spreadsheet-based LPA tracking, keeping up with the high frequency of audits may require transitioning to an automated system. Really, one of the biggest advantages for LPA software is that it allows any size company to produce results quickly, even with limited resources. So automated LPA software built around the Automotive Industry Action Group, CQI-8 Layered Process Audit Guideline is great for any organization. Beacon Quality also allows organizations to, 1, reduce administrative overhead. Companies schedule audits for 50 people or less in less than 10 minutes while accounting for when people are away from work. So some of the things I mentioned earlier in terms of scheduling. Email reminders go out automatically, which with direct links to electronic checklists. Even for larger facilities, this amounts to an 85 to 90% reduction in administrative overhead for LPA scheduling. Improve resource efficiency. Depending on your plant size, it's common to be able to reallocate as many as 2 full-time employees to value-added activities that drive strategic value. Next, get instant visibility into data. So mobile audits via smartphone or company-issued tablets make audit data immediately available. This helps pinpoint problems faster to reduce defects and quality costs, as well as helping inform predictive quality indicators. Increase audit completion rates. Real-time dashboards let organizations communicate LPA results. It's common to see departments competing on audit completion rates and other metrics, unleashing healthy competition to improve quality. And then protect data integrity. Question randomization and the ability to require photos make it harder for people to pencil whip audits. Timestamp records that include audit duration also help identify if individuals are engaging in this sort of behavior. So Rachel mentioned the one customer or company that required pictures of the actual auditor online. We can actually have within the audit checklist, the questions can require a picture and make it actually required in order to move on to the next question. And then finally, refine checklists often. So easy updates to checklists let you remove questions that you no longer need or add new ones to address recent issues. This agile approach to LPAs is a key ingredient of continuous improvement. And we talked about randomization and really the ease of updating your checklist to respond quickly to corrective actions, so you can then focus your future checklist to look at those areas to make sure you're holding those particular gains. So in addition to streamlining the audits themselves, company can also expect a faster, simpler LPA implementation with automated software. Paper-based systems take months to develop and implement, as well as maintain, whereas an off-the-shelf software-based LPA program can take as little as a few days. Perhaps the most important thing automotive and aerospace manufacturers should know about LPAs is the need to close the loop in audit data. That means addressing minor nonconformances on the spot, moving larger issues to a formal corrective action process, adding new audit questions to verify you're holding the gains. So too many companies, particularly those overwhelmed with the details of LPAs, let audit data just sit there while quality issues continue driving up costs. Not only does ignoring problems increase consumer safety risks, it also jeopardizes the business itself. The boat keeps filling up with water until the leak takes 100 times the effort and cost to repair. Automation helps companies finally get ahead so you can focus less on problems, move on to the big visionary goals on the horizon. So let's recap. So what are layered process audits? LPAs are all about verifying that operators are following process procedures as they're being followed each and every time. This is important because, as we learned, a full 75% of manufacturing defects result from nonconformance with processes, which is why LPA programs are so effective at reducing quality costs. Next would be bigger, faster quality cost reductions. In our experience, metrics where LPAs have the big impact include scrap and rework, customer returns, and reducing total cost of quality. Next would be how LPAs benefit the quality of culture. Beyond just dollars and cents, LPAs also help companies develop a code quality. When fully implemented, LPA programs enable company-wide engagement, proactive risk management, top-level prioritization, ongoing communication, accountability. Challenges of LPA implementations. There is a lot of administrative burden with managing LPAs, including scheduling, using auditors, accuracy of data, reporting and corrective action tracking, as well as outdated lists. Overcoming complexity through automation. But you can overcome the administrative challenges through automation. You'll reduce overhead, free up employees, get real-time reporting, create auditor accountability, and it's easy to update your checklists often. And then finally, closing the loop on LPA data. Don't just let data sit there. Use the information to hold the gains you've made in quality. Address nonconformances and then update your checklists with new questions to make sure those nonconformances continue to not be an issue. Automation helps companies finally get ahead so you can focus less on the problems and more on the big visionary goals on the horizon. And that's it. We can, of course, share, more than willing to share this presentation. You can email me and I will get that to you. And I think we'll wrap up with any questions.
We did have 2 questions since the last stop. Remember, these questions are put into the chat room. Aaron has asked, what is the most effective method to ensure audits are completed? Yeah,
well, I mean, once again, that's kind of a loaded question. That depends on the organization and the people that are doing the audits. The tool, our tool Beacon has a number of ways of doing that. As we mentioned, audits are scheduled. One of the things that we report on application is unscheduled audits. So, and when audit is not completed, emails are automatically sent out that you have an audit pass through that can filter up to, the audit administrator or whoever you choose. Mm-hmm. As Rachel mentioned, we've had customers get very creative with the picture portion. We actually take a picture of yourself on the floor doing the audit. You can see audit completion rates across the organization to see, over time if you have an issue with people not completing their audits on time or they just not completing them at all, and then address those issues specifically in those areas or with those individuals.
Thanks. There's a question here about ISO 9001 and asks, will these LPAs meet ISO 9001 audit requirements?
If it's, organized and structured correctly, yeah, it should.
All right. Brian has asked, in the auditing inspection world, there's that time-honored tradition between showing up unannounced to get real unscrubbed results and just having everything by a schedule.
Yes.
How do you do it? Like, do you balance? Or is it just all scheduled?
No, you can do ad hoc audits at any time. So okay. An individual can schedule, or not schedule, but actually initiate an ad hoc audit. It's just like any other audit. It allows the auditor to choose a checklist or template, and then the particular target area in the organization where they're going to do that audit. So all of the data results are tracked just like they normally would be.
And I'm going to skip one and go to another of Brian's questions. He's asked, well, how do you manage all these outputs? Is there a trick for reporting on the findings? How do you do it? Any advice?
Well, we have a series of canned reports within Beacon, where we've seen the most requests for reporting, if I understand the question correctly. But that can also be tailored. One of the things we just released in beta form is our data warehouse, which basically allows our customers to write all of their own custom report templates. So, using, off-the-shelf business intelligence tools like Tableau or Power BI or whatever, you can start to, create very custom and tailored reports, that drill down and are very specific to your organization and where you want to really focus your data.
All right, thank you. Here's a question, and I'm just going to read the question verbatim. Is there a suggestion for how to be successful to put this in place if quality is a department versus the entire culture? 2, not all leaders are brought in. Do you pilot it, or you try to get the buy-in and deploy a big bang, broadly and at one time approach?
I'm sorry, Kurt, can you repeat the first part of that one more time?
Sure. Do you have a suggestion for scenario for implementation when, number 1, quality is a department and is not the culture, and 2, not all leaders are brought in? Do you try to pilot it, or do you just go for a big bang kind of, boom, here it is?
Yeah, that's kind of a change management question, which is something actually from an experience with. Yeah, dealing with an organization maybe that's not, unified in its vision, especially around quality, it's really the pilot. You want to seek out, an area within your organization. It could be within a specific plant, like a particular manufacturing line, or area. It could be maintenance, whatever. Where you feel you're going to get the most buy-in, we're going to get the most excitement about, potentially implementing this. And create a case study really is, kind of show before and after, the process of actually implementing, an LPA program, and, make sure you've got the before and after metrics to kind of highlight the benefits, because we're not arguing that LPAs, or, you should just do an LPA just to do an LPA. Arguing that doing LPAs and having a program is going to substantially and tangibly improve your operation. And that can be driven and be shown with data. So if you kind of go in with that, make it small, make it contained, and then create that case within your organization, start at the plant level, assuming you get the plant buy-in, then you can start moving to multiple plants when you start having that plant case study, visible.
And I have several questions from Katarina, so I'm going to try to combine them and tee them up for you. Why different layers and different frequencies? What's the advantage? And secondly, how do you prep the audit team, please? So those are the 2 questions she has asked. Yeah, so
why the different layers? So, and the different frequencies. So that's really more of a time management and engagement perspective. Typically, the higher up you go up the organization, say at the plant manager level, time is at a premium. If you ever try to get a meeting with a plant manager, typically their days are pretty full. So, it's really about trying to schedule the audits at a frequency that is achievable. If you try to schedule layer 1 audit, at a high frequency rate, it probably is going to fail. So you need to take, that's kind of the consensus approach there. In terms of prepping the LPA team, really talking about prepping your entire organization, if I understand the question correctly. And that kind of comes back to that pilot. And once you've got a good pilot in place, and the simplicity of the system and the questions and the checklists are demonstrated, and you get enough, kind of internal word of mouth going around it in terms of, hey, this is actually really easy. This particular area of the plan is seen, over the, several weeks or months that we've implemented the pilot, we're starting to see some great, improvements and feedback. Then it helps prep the rest of the organization for, really kind of getting behind it and getting on board. But from an actual technical perspective, it's not super difficult. As we mentioned, the questions are really easy. The tool is, Beacon, of course, is very simple to use.
So we're just about out of time. And we're not going to get every single question. And you've been kind enough to list your email up there. So if you have any additional questions, it's scott.larsen@easinc.com. There is one that I'm sure is on everyone's mind. And again, this is situational. There's not one size fits all, but estimated cost of this sort of program. It says audit mobile program. So maybe that particular question could be related only to the technology that's portable that's used, or do you have any insights? Because people are going to worry about implementation costs.
Yeah, so kind of the way that we approach that is the pilot Typically we do a free trial. So you can, for 30 days, so you can actually get up on the system, actually with live data, actually get the full, product. There's no limitations on the product per se, and really get your feet wet with it and actually, get some real honest feedback on the product. Once a customer does decide to execute on purchasing the product, we do a pilot program. So all of the implementation, all of the, the training is a part of the cost. It's not a, separate add-on. And we do an annual license type model, so it's a, recurring annual subscription. So no huge upfront cost in order to get on the program. From a cost perspective, it's going to, depend on the size. We do based on plant size, so the number of, actual, people at a plant, and it's a range. It's a, it's a cost range. It could be from a, a couple $1,000s all the way up to, more. It just depends.
Okay.
And if you do want to have see more about Beacon Quality, you can go to beaconquality.com, and there is information there as well as the video you see on your screen. And there's a free trial link in the upper right-hand corner of every page of that website. So you can request a free trial if you'd like to do that.
So I think we're running into a technical difficulty here where sound may not be present for all participants.
Oh.
I'm getting some messages. Not everyone is saying that.
I wonder, did the WebEx, did it end? I mean, we're still on, obviously, but did it end for some people at 10? Because it's now slightly past.
It could have, and that's, again, one of those technical glitches. Oh, apparently it's back now.
Okay, good.
So, Rachel, why don't you go ahead and do that, the brand the URL announcement one more time.
Sure, and I'm also typing it in for everyone in
Good
the
idea.
chat to get that. But you can go to beaconquality.com, and on every page of that website, there's a free trial link button in the upper right-hand corner that you can click to request that. And it's a full 30-day pilot program, so we walk you through the whole setup and everything, and you get to have your hands in the software. You can have the download of the mobile app on your phone and actually start using Beacon Quality for your plant and organization. And also, while you're on that website, if you go to under resources, there's events and webinars, and we're going to have another webinar relating specifically to LPA questions and how to correctly create those. So they're really simple to use, and there's not a lot of heavy lifting and education needed for the rest of the organization to start making progress with this.
Okay. So it sounds like our sound is hit and miss for some of our participants. So I thank Scott and Rachel for your time. We're going to go ahead and end now. This will be posted, and people who have RUs will also be automatically, the email will be sent out to you, your recertification units. And I think that's about it. It was a great presentation, Scott and Rachel. I appreciate it, and thank you very much.
Yeah, our pleasure.
Thank you, Kurt.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay.